Welcome to Life in Sirens, Behind and on the Scene, a podcast by first responders. We're your hosts, Sophie,
Jamie,
and Aubrey.
The content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policies or positions of any medical institutions, emergency medical services, or healthcare organizations. Patient privacy is a top priority, and all discussions involving real-world emergency situations are de-identified and altered to ensure confidentiality. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional or your local EMS protocols before making any decisions regarding patient care or medical practices. Listener discretion is advised, as some topics may include discussions of real-world emergency situations.
Welcome to another episode of Life in Sirens. Today, sadly, it is just me and Jaime, but
No sofa loaf.
no sofa loaf. But we just wanted to pop on here to tell you 'tis the season for everybody graduating medic school and now having to figure out your partner dynamics.
Right, because especially if you were a paramedic EMT pair and now you were the EMT that is now a paramedic, now you're a double medic team and you've got to figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah. And we are coming to you speaking on this matter because we have recently gone through this transition. Well, I say recently, we just hit our 2-year mark, and I feel like we have just now kind of gotten into a really good flow and kind of figured out or refigured out our partner dynamics through all of that.
For sure. It took us a minute, and it's not necessarily something that I anticipated being an issue because we communicated really well. So I think that I knew that there were some things that we were going to have to adjust, but I did not realize how difficult those things were going to be to adjust.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing is I am very, especially on scene, I'm very clear, very direct, and very much take charge of whatever situation that we're in. And that is one, just kind of my personality, but also something that I really worked on doing when I got my medic. But that turns out is really hard for me to undo. And so a lot of times it would be Aubrey's call. And we were partners for,
I think 3 years before I got my medic.
Yeah.
2 or 3.
And so we kind of had this flow. I would go in, I would make patient contact, she would talk with family, and that was kind of how we did it. Would get in, I'd get it on monitor side, she would get in on bench side. We had this whole flow, and that was every single call. And then all of a sudden, it's every other call. But I was still doing everything the same. So I was still going in and making initial patient contact, and I had not adjusted. And it would be a pretty involved call, and I would be telling everybody what I needed from them and all the things. And finally I would look up and Obs would be like, so are you going to take this, or
You want to write this ticket, or?
Yeah, it would be this moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I am currently behaving as though this is my call when really I'm support staff right now. And it took a long time for us to adjust. How did you approach those conversations with me when I was very much in the way?
Very much in the way. Well, I think that I'm going to just say this before I answer your question. I think that coming out of medic school, especially in my last semester of medic school when you're doing your preceptorship, I knew that scene dynamics and controlling the scene and being able to give direction clearly and all of those things, that was my biggest thing that I needed to work on. And I knew that.
Why did you feel like that was the biggest thing you needed to work on?
Well, because you are very, very good at all of those things. And we had been partners for a long time prior to me going to medic school and all of those things. And so I had always been in a position that I never had to do any of those things. I was never in a position where you weren't right behind me. Even if there was a situation where I gave some direction, you were right behind me to either verify.
Like a little pit bull.
Oh yeah. You were either there to verify that what I am doing is correct, or you were there to restate what I had just said louder so that everybody actually heard it, So
Which I also do with funny things that Aubrey says. She's hilarious, and she will say very funny things, but quietly. And then half of the reason people think that I'm as funny as I am, if they do think I'm funny, is because she says really funny stuff, and then we'll do it quietly, and I'll repeat it louder.
yeah,
Because nobody heard it, but I thought it was funny. But then they think that I said it. And every time she'll just give me a dirty look, and I'm like, be louder, and they will not think I'm hilarious.
be louder and they'll think you're funny. I am Jamie Wesley's ghostwriter, yes. So coming out of medic school, I knew that those were things that I needed to work on. So to answer your question, how did I approach that? Never during the call. That's not the time to have this conversation with your partner. Even if you are at odds during the call, you are never going to make anything better by calling somebody out on scene. You're just going to embarrass them or embarrass yourself in turn.
For sure. The only time that I feel like it is appropriate to call out another provider on scene is if whatever they're doing is dangerous
to your patient.
Yes. Yeah, to your patient care. If it's a dynamic issue, like, we can address that later.
Yeah, so never during the call. It would always be, at least, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I feel like I always tried to approach it, like in a debrief kind of situation after the call, and now I know there were times that I did not. It was a little bit more emotional than just simply a conversation. However, I feel like we always tried to just have like a debrief format conversation about the call, like what do we think went well, what do we think we could have done better, and then we always said, like, what could I have done to make your life easier on that call, and vice versa.
Yeah. I think even that took us a minute to get to, because there was initially, I think the first like month of you having your medic, I think I was very aware of those situations. I think that I was still really bad at navigating it, but I was aware. And then later on, I kind of just like forgot that was happening. And so there were times that I would have been very, like, I overstepped on a call for sure. And I was oblivious. I had no idea. I'm like, that went great. And we'd get in the truck, and Hobbs would be like, can we talk about that? I'd be like, oh, I mean, yeah, it went so well. She'd be like, it did not. Maybe for you. Maybe because you took it. And I'd be like, oh, no. And this kind of happened on a few occasions where she would be like, can we talk about that? And then we started to kind of form that like debriefing format. We'd get out of the ER, would get back in the truck and be like, all right, you ready to talk about it? And we would. And I think that the issues that we would have got like fewer and farther between, but still like really persisted for that whole first year.
Yeah. Well, and I think that a lot of that had to do with you. Jamie is also an alternate supervisor, so she got pulled a lot during my first year to be supervisor. So it was kind of a hard dynamic to go from working with usually an EMT, but somebody that is part-time, and you just kind of naturally take the leadership role on the truck. It's your shift, your truck, all those things. And then to come back and like we had to start over almost. So I don't know that we give ourselves enough credit because
it was a very strange time. That was a strange year because I did get pulled much more than normal.
Yeah.
I think that we also had a tough time with this dynamic sometimes because we do a lot of our calls without really talking to each other. And so what would happen, especially I think if it was my call, I would get into the truck and I would expect the dynamic to be like it used to be. And I would get into the truck and I'd be like, all right, what do you like? What's their name? What's their birthday? What's all this stuff? And I'll just be like, what? And I'll be like, what? And we kind of both fell out of like any routine because it's hard to switch routines back and forth. And it's hard to switch that role back and forth, especially when I would come off a supervisor shift. Our next shift after you'd been with an EMT, you got into paramedic gear and I was in like captain gear. And then we would have to shift back to like every other call.
Yeah.
Where the other one was in charge. And it just got very strange. And so, like, what are some things that you feel like now we do that helps to mitigate that?
I think first and foremost is we have never stopped talking about it. We still have conversations after every call. Now, they look a lot different these days. They're more like, what do you think is going on? Like, oh my gosh, let's talk about this and blah, 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 and all of that. But we never stopped talking about it. And I think that we have been able to get to this point because we absolutely hammered the heck out of it, to the point where after a call, if you got in on the wrong side, we would talk about it. And next time, like, I was like, hey, it really threw me off, and this is so dumb. I am one of those people that if I am standing on the left side of the patient when I am putting on the cardiac leads, I will put them on backwards. Like, that's how much of just like a routine I get into. So sometimes it would be just dumb stuff like that. Like, hey, when you got in on that side of the truck, I couldn't get back over to airway, and it really threw me off. Like, I remember one specific time that, oh my gosh, you were a captain that day, and I just had this call from hell, honestly. It went so badly. And you set up my intubation stuff to intubate. And I am ever so slightly OCD, and that like
a bit.
Yeah, just a bit. And that threw me off, because then I was managing the patient's airway, mentally preparing for intubation, and then I went to go physically prepare for intubation, and I looked over and all of my intubation stuff was already out. So then it was really hard to get my brain back on board of like where we're at with this call, where am I at with my my pseudo checklist, you know. So that was a conversation that we had to have.
We did, and that was a moment where those are things that I know about you. And I know that you go step by step, and that helps to, one, organize your physical environment, but it also helps to organize your mental environment. Where am I? What am I doing? What comes next? And that moment for me was really like I didn't know what to do with my hands. And so in that captain's role, sometimes you feel quite useless because it's not your call. It is not your patient. This is like your crew. Like, you're really here just to help and to support them and like be whatever they need, but you feel like you need to be involved. And so I thought, okay, you're back in, like, perfect. I'll get all your intubation stuff set up. I know you. I know where you put things. Like, I got it. And that's because I needed to be busy. I actually didn't even think about what you needed in that moment. And what you probably needed, what would have been way more useful, would have been to just take over bagging. So that way you could get set up. And my brain was just like not there. I was just frazzled that I didn't have my hands doing something. And we had to have that conversation because it was very much like I threw off your game in a very important moment because I was thinking too much about what I needed to be doing or how I felt. And that was a big talk. That was like that was a big one. A big ego minute. And those are things that we talk about a lot, which I think is super important, is making sure that like our egos don't get in the way. Mine is much more problematic than yours is. I think that you do really, really well not being like prideful or egotistic about things. And I think that I struggle a lot more with that. I think I came into, and this is not like all of it, my general personality kind of lives there, but I think that I came into EMS in a time where there was more and more women than there had ever been. But then a lot of those female-male partnership dynamics and like female responders with like male firemen, things like that, was women just being like, oh yeah, you pick up the heavy stuff. And I watched that dynamic and I realized that those women garnered far less respect from their co-responders. And I think that my reaction to that was to be just like full of myself in the sense that like I can do whatever they can do. And I was almost like a bit reckless with it. Like, I will lift anything, I will do anything. And what that kind of presented for me a problem down the road once I got my medic and then got my critical care is in my brain, I was like, I cannot look like I can't do something. And how that's manifested in our new dynamic is being idle, like having idle hands because it's not my role right now. It took me a minute to be able to like kind of adjust my perspective on that. And it's not that I'm idle because I'm incapable. It's idle because it's not my role right now.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the things that you and I had to overcome, kind of, that's where a lot of that came from. That's where a lot of my role in that came from.
Yeah.
There is one thing that we do now that I think is really cool. And it's something that you just started doing like a couple months ago. And we have a hard time transitioning back and forth, especially on critical calls, between like who is going to get this person's information, who is going to talk to this family. And what was happening is that whoever's call it was, so let's say it's my call, I would go straight to the patient, initiate patient care. OBS would make sure I had everything that I needed, but then would peel off and go talk with family and get all of the information that, you know, the background that comes from that. Well, there's a lot that you get told or that you understand based off of just like the general interaction with those family members, not necessarily the words they say. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that I felt like there was a lot of gaps. I would be like, all right, what do you know? And she would tell back to me what they told her, but without like the context of body language and the actual words that they say and the house and like, you know, everything that's around. Also, please excuse the barking in the background. I have many a dog and they are just really going after something right now. And George is mad that he's not out there.
George is mad he doesn't have a headset on, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm not really sure what his deal is.
I think he wants to participate.
Yeah, he's got a lot to say.
Buddy simmer. And so I would get that information, but there would really be no context to it because that's just a really hard thing to describe quickly. And I would feel like there were gaps and I would get frustrated. And then OBS would be like, literally, they were the worst historian ever. Like, this is all I've got.
Literally, it took me 10 minutes to get this out of them. Like, we're not getting anywhere.
But without being that person that experiences that, you're almost like, come on, there was nothing else you could have gotten out of them. And that has nothing to do, that does not echo like our level of trust. That is just like kind of ingrained into you. Like, if you don't do it yourself, are you sure it was done right?
Yeah.
And you and I both experienced that. I'd come back and be like, I got nothing.
They have hypertension. You're like, okay.
Okay, you did not.
Well, they're unresponsive right now, so.
So that's not it. Maybe. And this would happen back and forth. And sometimes we were fine at it. Sometimes we were terrible at it. So then we were like, okay, let's switch. Whoever's call it is, we'll go talk to family. And then the other one of us will stay with patient and initiate all the patient care. But then you were in the same problem. You'd jump in the middle of
patient care, and you don't get to see where the patient was initially found, how they initially presented, and that gives you so much, like,
so much
just background knowledge.
Yes, especially when writing your run ticket or your PCR, especially when you're writing that. If you put a lot of detail in it, that is very like crucial information to be able to kind of paint this picture of how you found this person. Mm-hmm. So I was captain for like a string of shifts. And OBS was working with a bunch of EMTs, and we all know that when you work with like newer providers or part-time providers or EMT or medic, that sometimes gathering information is not something they're great at. And so they kept coming back to the truck and being like, well.
Yeah, I think that they just, they work with so many different people. Like it's just hard to know what level of information you want. Some people just want like literally are they taking blood thinners right now? Like, that's all I care about, you know?
Yeah.
So everybody's different, just to kind of cut that learning curve that you don't have time to climb out of the way. I started just asking family to come with me to the truck, to the ambulance, to the rig, whatever you call it. And
to the box,
to the U-Haul. Let's go. And it has actually worked out super, super well.
So well.
For a couple of reasons. The first one being that you get to do patient care, gather all your information, get vitals, get a 12 lead, establish lines, whatever it is that you need to be doing, and also getting critical information at the same time. You don't have to do one or the other. You don't have to choose. You can do it all at the same time. The second thing is, which this one kind of surprised me, this is where I was kind of expecting it to go awry. And everybody that is listening to this right now, that is rolling their eyes, saying, "I would never let anybody into the back of my truck. Like that's where work happens. Like whatever happens in the back of the truck stays in the back of the truck." I hear you. Just listen to this with an open mind. Just try it one time, because what we have found is that when family members are in the back and you are actively working on the patient and interacting with them in a like genuine, meaningful way where they can tell that you give a shit what's happening right
you're
now.
Trying.
And you give a shit about their past and the events leading up to and all of that. And in tandem, they can see what actual work you are doing back there, because let's be honest, very few people in the greater population understands what happens in the back of an ambulance. And them being able to see it firsthand, like, we are doing things, we are establishing IVs, we're giving meds, you know, whatever the situation demands, that might be something that they didn't even know that you were capable of. And they have been, every family member that we have done this with has been wildly respectful, has been very helpful, and we have gotten to find out way more information than we ever would have on scene, because there's always things that come up during your assessment that you're like, I wonder if this is normal, you know, and you then have that resource to be able to immediately ask and get verification for. So
that was my biggest surprise when she started doing this, because I was resistant. I was like, I do not want family in the back of my truck. They're going to be in the way. Like, it's just going to be a problem. And she's like, just try it. It's okay. So we did. And that's what I found, is it was the exact opposite. They actually wanted to stay out of your way. And they were always worried that they were in the way. But when those moments come up where you're like, oh, hey, did you ask this? And then your other provider's like, no, I didn't. And then you look at, if you're lucky enough to have fire respond to you, you're like, hey, whoever's not doing something. So you find the one firefighter that's standing in the corner not doing anything, which may be because they're in charge and they're letting everybody else get some experience, but it also may be because they're not really comfortable in that situation. You then send them to go try and get whatever information you forgot to ask, which we've all know. If you ever play the game Telephone,
that is exactly what it is.
that's what happens, because they often will then find, so you ask like fireman 1 to get you some info. They will then ask fireman 2 to go get that info, who may or may not ask fireman 3. And then by the time it gets to the family and gets back down the fireman chain, you have, like, you know their blood type, but that was not what we needed to know.
I'm grateful that I now know they take hypertension meds. However, I was asking about blood thinners. So
yes, there is like this lack of, there's this loss of information in the relay.
Yeah.
And that is not necessarily that is not a fault of those responders. I think it's a difference in system.
100%.
Right, because it's like when you operate in like a 5-man team or a 6-man team, you communicate with all of those responders, because everybody has to be on the same page. But we operate normally in a 2-man team, and we are always on the same page. And so we don't have to play that game of telephone to like get down the line.
Yeah. And
sometimes it's kind of funny to see that happen, and I'll be like, guys.
Like, oh, no, that cannot be right.
Which is always kind of funny, but it's so nice, because now when you look up, you can just be like, oh, hey, Pawpaw, Mawmaw, grandson,
Mimi,
whatever it is.
TT.
Yep. There's so many weird names. Popsy. There's so many weird names, but you can just look at them and be like, oh, do they take thinners? Because I forgot to ask, because this wasn't a trauma, but now I'm concerned. Like, there are so many different resources that's given us, and I've been pleasantly surprised. Now, this approach has its limitations.
Sure.
Of course. Depending on the level of critical your patient is depending on how many responders you're going to have in your unit.
And how mobile this other patron is.
Yes, for sure. Their mobility.
Yep.
And then also their like general demeanor. We've all been on those scenes where families screaming at you and like they're in the way or whatever. Those are not the ones that you bring in your truck. But family members that are like concerned and like are helpful and all the things, bring them in, ask them questions.
Yeah.
It has been the coolest. And if y'all already do this and you think that we are just like silly little beans that are so behind the times,
please let us know.
Congratulations. Congratulations to you. It took us a hot minute to figure this one out, and I'm so glad that you did, because it has really changed my practice and interaction with family. And when you genuinely care and you genuinely ask questions, like, family will have your back if anything does go awry, which is really cool, because it doesn't feel as isolated or like sneaky.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like what happens in the back of the truck stays in the back of the truck. If you're having a hard time figuring out what in the world is going on with this person, odds are family is too.
Yeah.
And so it is nice to kind of brainstorm even with them. Yeah, there's been a lot of benefits to it that I've loved.
Absolutely. And this kind of leads me into my second answer to your question of what we did to kind of combat this would be, well, I mean, honestly, it's the same as my first answer, but in a different dynamic. It's still communication, but talking your calls out loud has been another thing that I very much had to work on when I first got my medic. And it's something that you have done. And if you're not used to doing it, it feels extremely odd to just like say your stream of thought out loud. Now, there are ways to kind of garner that a little bit better.
Especially if you're like most of us who are ADHD and we have 7 different thoughts. Like the editing process of this podcast is really just editing out me starting 7 sentences before I actually get to the one I'm trying to say. And if that is your train of thought, sometimes speaking your calls out loud and your thought process out loud is difficult. But the longer you do it, the better you get at it. And the more it gets to almost be like in a list style of like, I need this from you, I need this from you, because this is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
It gets much easier. And I had a partner when I first started, and she did that. And I witnessed the difference in calls when I went from her to somebody else to a different partner. I witnessed how much the other responders, how calm they were, because they were on the same page of her train of thought. And so I tried, especially once I got my medic, like that was my goal all the way through, was trying to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And it takes a minute though.
It does, absolutely does. I think that like on mundane calls, like just your kind of run of the mill, nothing critical is happening, but you do need to get some things done. I kind of disguise that as talking to the patient. Like as we're walking to the truck, I will tell the patient, hey, when we get you in the back of the truck, we're going to do a lot of things pretty quickly. We're going to get some vitals on you. We're going to take a picture of your heart. That way everybody that's standing around you now knows, okay, when we get in this truck, we're going to put them on the 12 lead. We're gonna start an IV on this arm over here. Okay, now everybody knows that we're gonna start an IV. Like the expectation is set not only for the patient, they know that what's about to happen to them, but also for everybody around you. And that just kind of keeps everybody on the same page. Now, if your patient is unresponsive, obviously you cannot use that little trick. You would look like a crazy person. Please don't do that. But in those instances, that's when you need to, make eye contact, look people in the eyeballs and say, this is the plan. I need you to do A, B, C, and D.
And what's really cool about your partner getting their medic is them figuring out different ways to do the same things. So I do not do that. I don't tell the patient, which it's not like I don't talk to the patient and tell them what's happening.
They don't get to know what's going on.
Yeah, it's a secret. No. I still talk to them, but my approach is much more like responder directed. And so I will be like, hey, I need you to get them on a 12 lead. I need you to get a blood pressure. I need you to do this. And it's very almost bullet listed. And I think that is it comes out with the same outcome, but it's just personality based.
Yeah.
I am much more comfortable being like direct and not confrontational in a negative way, but like, this is what I need from you.
Yeah.
And you are much more comfortable being like, hey guys, this is the plan. And I think that's been really cool to watch you like disguise that same kind of communication with a direct conversation with the patient, because as long as they are paying attention and present, they also know what's going on, which has been really cool to watch. In the beginning of our partnership, not like our whole partnership, but our double medic partnership.
Double medic partnership.
Yeah. In the beginning of that, I had to learn how to shut up. I had to learn how to be quiet. Because the problem was not that Aubrey was not capable of doing those things. It's that I was already doing them. So it would be very silly for her to then do them again. And so I had to learn to be quiet when it was not my call, and to let her take that lead and to do those things and find her flow in doing those things. Because even though we operate very, very similarly and our goals are very similar in all of our calls, we personality-wise are different. And so what is the most comfortable flow for her is not going to necessarily be what's the most comfortable for me. And yeah, one of my biggest hurdles was to stop talking and let you do it, which was harder than everyone may think. I know you're surprised.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about communication, how important that is, and how even though we were already good communicators, we had to change the way we communicated. So we had a conversation, and we've had many conversations, and part of it was asking how you prefer to receive feedback. How do you think that you prefer to receive feedback now? Maybe it's the same, maybe it's different than you did initially.
I think that it is different, and only because I think when I first got out of medic school, I probably would have said, tell me right the fuck now what I need to be doing different, like in the moment, because I don't want to kill anybody. So if I'm doing something, please tell me right now. I think now that is very much not the case. I've gotten a little bit more confidence under my belt. So I would say now I would prefer to, in the moment, if there's something that is going to like directly impact patient care, or something that is reckless, or something that needs to be addressed right now, I prefer to just be like, hey, what do you think about this? And have it directed that way. And that's all that needs to happen on scene. I usually will take the hint at that. I'm not really not the type of person that will rebuttal and be like, well, no, because...
Yes. And you and I have had a conversation before that, like, that is our approach.
Yes.
So we both know that it's like our code.
Yes.
If you look at me and you say, hey, what do you think about this instead? That, if it is phrased that way, it is that I'm concerned that what you're about to do is not the correct course of care.
Yeah.
And that rarely has to happen, but if it does, we both know that that's what that means.
Yeah, usually the only time that we ever have to use that is like literally moving patients, like mechanically moving them.
Yes, it is a mechanical movement where you'll be like, let's do this. And I'm like, hey, what if we do this instead? Or vice versa. Because sometimes, y'all, I forget about tools we have. And Obs has to be like, oh, okay, well, how about this 7 set of stairs? This how do you?
7 flights of stairs.
Yes. Obs has to say, oh, how about these 7 flights of stairs? We use the stair chair. And it's like my arch nemesis because it used to be behind our captain's chair and I hated every second of it. So I forget that it exists. I blocked it out of my general like memory. And so instead of carrying them down 7 flights of stairs with the Mega Mover, I'm like, oh, yeah, that tracks. So there's moments like that where it's like, just pause for a second. Yeah, I think that I'm on the same page.
Yeah. And then along with that, after the call, obviously, you guys can just have, or we would have a conversation like, hey, because a lot of trust comes with that in your partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't say for 100% certainty that if somebody approached me on that scene and off the cuff was like, hey, why don't we do it like this? That I would just 100% be like, okay, yeah, let's do it. I would think about it. I would put some stock into it, but that's not really the case with us. I'm just like, okay, if you think that that's best, like, let's do it. And then after the call would be the time to be like, I think that was best because I saw a coyote in the background that was about to chase us, like, or whatever it is that you're missing.
Yeah, that kind of is the very core, I think, of what we're talking about is trust. Absolutely. And it's because I know your intentions. Like, I know your intentions are never to embarrass me. I know your intentions are never to make me feel small. I know your intentions are always to make, our care for our patient better, and to make our dynamic as partners better, and to make me as a medic better. And so if I remember your intentions behind every conversation that we have, and vice versa, if you remember mine, then nothing is like hard to hear. It's so much easier to put your ego down and not get defensive or like, well, this is why, because I know that your intentions are only for good.
Yeah.
There is no like intention that is ever like belittlement or condescension or anything like that. And I think that if you and your partner don't have that, at the very baseline, you trust that their intentions are only for good, then that is the biggest problem that you're going to have in that hurdle.
Yeah.
It's the biggest problem with communication and with partner dynamics, because if you don't trust that everything that they say to you is for the betterment of both of you and your patient, then you're going to read it as condescension or as something that is
an attack,
is negative. Yeah. And you're going to get defensive and all those things. And we had a lot of conversations addressing that because my baseline was to be defensive. And that has just a lot to do with like who I am and my past and all the things. But like my baseline was to get defensive and be like, I know what I'm doing. Instead of just thinking, okay, well, walk me through that. Because my brain did not go down that path. So walk me through why yours did. And most of the time we would land in like a really cool, like elevated educational place where I learned something new or you learned something new. Or we just figured out a different way to approach something.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would end in like, okay, same outcome, 2 different approaches. Sometimes I would adjust my practice because of it. And I think that that was a really cool moment. But the core base of that is because I know what your intentions are, so I can trust those things from you.
100%.
I think that that's like really the baseline of what you need to build.
Yeah. But on the flip side, me being new, I would also get super defensive because I felt like I just got out of school. I just got this license. Like, I have to prove myself. And anything that even could have been interpreted as you did not do a good job, like immediate on the defense.
Yeah.
Well, I did that because of this,
Mhm.
and I have a paper to back me up on it. You know, not anything to that extreme, but that's how I felt.
But yeah, we did have some conversations where I was like, hey, you're like really elevated right now, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
And those are the moments, and we had to talk about that. That's like, it took us a whole year to get through that.
Mm-hmm.
But we finally figured out that it's because I trusted Aubrey's level of competency to like far more years of experience than she trusted her own. And so I was looking at her like truly as a peer. And so when I would ask questions or when I would be like, oh, I don't know if I would have approached it that way, it was never in a place of like, you're new. It was always in a place of a peer. And I would forget all the time that I'd be like, well, you've been a medic for like 2 years. And she'd be like, it's been 6 months. I did that all the time because I trusted her competency to such a high degree that what would happen is that I would not be like, that was a really good idea, or you did a really good job, or things that you just need when you just get out of medic school. Those like baseline conversations where somebody is like, you are on the right track, just to like give them that qualifier, like, yes, you're correct. And that helps build confidence. Well, I already had so much confidence in her. I was like, you got it. I was asking her questions. I'm like, teach me things. And she didn't have that yet. And I missed that. And so what would happen instead is that instead of her building confidence, every time that I would come with something that maybe was different or would be a critique or whatever it would immediately feel like an attack because the confidence hadn't been built.
Yeah.
And once we finally figured that out, where I was like, oh, I don't tell you you're doing a great job because in my brain you're a peer and you already know it because you're already a great medic. And you'd be like, okay, well, I'm a baby. I need you to tell me that was a good idea. And so once we kind of adjusted that dynamic and I realized that like she was not a 5-year, 10-year medic, she was still new, and that competency is very, very important, but confidence is what makes you feel like you're a competent medic.
Yeah.
And we had to build that, and now I feel like you absolutely have landed there.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely a lot better.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. That was something that I did not see that one coming. Because I was like, hey, you're doing great. You're like, could you tell me every once in a while?
I'm like, okay, but it's like really lonely out here. It's just me and you. So if you could just be the one that says, yeah, you're doing a good job, that would be like really cool.
That would be super.
Because like the patients aren't saying it, so like.
I was like, oh, yep. Ooh, this is a fun one. What's your threshold for humor versus seriousness on a shift?
Oh God, the limit does not exist. I would much rather be humorous than.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you about to give me an example of where that went
No,
terribly awry?
we're just not the same.
Oh yeah, no, we are not the same in this.
Yeah, and so that's really, so Obs is like humor all the time. Now, on like a serious call, she's a serious person. But her like baseline is like, she's essentially like the Joker, why so serious? Like it is just like, why stop taking everything so seriously? Everyone would be much happier if they did not. And on like a life scale, absolutely agree. But I sometimes have to be like, hey, I need you to tell me that you understand that this is a serious moment. And she'll be like, yes, I get it. I'm like, okay. Because the way that my brain works is that if anything big would happen on a shift or a problem that we like had to deal with or something that like could have gone horribly wrong, but we like subverted somehow, Obs would immediately start like giggling about it and like making jokes about it. And I would have to be like, no. I need you to know. I need you to look at me right now in my eyeballs and tell me that you get that this was a serious moment, that this cannot happen again. And she'd be like, yeah, I'm direct. I understand. And I'd be like, okay.
Yes, I always understood the gravity of the situation. However, the trauma, does not let me always externally validate that.
And that was the disconnect. It was not that she did not take things seriously. It's just that she did not translate that in like outward response or action. And so, it's like when you giggle at a funeral.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's sad, but like your just general traumatic response is to giggle.
Mm-hmm.
It was similar to that. And I was like, I need you to verbally tell me that you understand. And that is my own issue. I'm like, we have to be on the same page. But that was a funny one because you are much more humor based and I am like, this has to be serious.
This is so serious right now. I need you to act like it.
Which has been a fantastic partner dynamic, honestly, because where you float up sometimes a little too high, I can like be a little bit of gravity for you.
Yeah.
And where I am like essentially like a rock, just stuck to the ground, just a little fun sucker. Sometimes I am.
No.
You help me float. Like, you help me, like, lift up and take things less seriously and not carry around so much weight. I think I just took a lot of weight on my shoulders, and I was like, everything is on me, and the survival of mankind is my problem. And you were like, that's a bit dramatic. It's like, you're right. It is a bit dramatic.
There's a little bit drama.
Right. So that was a fun question. If something is bothering you, what's the best way for me to bring it up?
If something is bothering me,
If I can tell something is bothering you,
okay,
but we've not talked about it, what's the best way for me to bring it up to you?
I think the best way would be in private. Again, not in the middle of a call. In private, and just be like, hey, I have noticed that you are a little bit off today. And then I'm probably going to rebuttal that, and you're probably going to have to give me some facts. Like, you did this. That is why I feel like you're a bit off. And I'll be like, yeah, okay.
Gotcha. I'm also a fact person. I'm like, tell me why. But only if I don't think so. If I know I'm off, and you're like, hey, you're a little bit off today, I'll just be like, yep. Yes, I am.
Yeah, it depends on how much I want to talk about it, I think. I think I'll probably try to be like, no, I'm fine. Why do you even think that?
I'll be like,
And then I'm like, you know what? Yeah, actually, let's talk about it.
Now, is that true for anyone? It's like, so your partner's with somebody else, not me. And they're like, hey, you seem weird. Why are you being a weirdo?
Yeah, I would say that's true for everyone.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, I would be more defensive initially if it was somebody else. Because again, it goes back to intentions. I don't know why they're saying that to me.
Yeah.
If they approach it the way that we talked about, if they're like, we're back at the station, it's quiet, and they're like, hey, like, I've just noticed you're kind of grumpy today. Like, are you okay? If they approach it that way, I'm much more likely to have a conversation or be like, I haven't noticed that about myself. What is it that makes you feel that way? We can have a much more fluid conversation, but if they were just like, why are you being a bitch?
Yeah.
I'd be like,
probably not the move.
Yeah, not the move. I think the way you approach things is very important.
Yeah. Especially, like, if you approach it that way, coming off of a bad call, and, like, maybe the call didn't go great, but also maybe your partner didn't treat you great on that call because it wasn't going great, and afterwards you're like, hey, you were kind of a bitch to me on that call. What up? Probably not the time. Probably give it some, let the wounds heal a little bit. Take them to Taco Bell. Maybe have a conversation.
That's a tough one. That's a tough approach. Sophia's not here to chime in on this, but what her and I started doing, and this is just like a friendship dynamic, but also can be a partner dynamic. But she has a hard time reading tone, and tone is very important to me, and it's not as important for her. And so what I started doing when we're having, like, we need to have a serious conversation, or we actively are having a serious conversation, but it's over text or something, I always explicitly tell her my tone. I always say, like, my tone is, like, soft and unguarded and non-accusatory. And that helps you truly read words in the correct way.
Yeah.
Because most of us are immediately, like, if we're already defensive, we read it in a certain way. Or we hear things in a certain way. And so that's something that, like, if your partner, because again, almost all of us in this job are neurodivergent. So, like, if your partner has a hard time reading your tone, or your tone is always, like, kind of baseline harsh or monotone, literally say that out loud. Like, tell them what your intention is. And I found that helps a whole lot.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have, I say we because I'm taking credit for this even though I was not a part of it. Jaime did an episode on this podcast all about communication, and it is fantastic. And really, if there's anything that we get to in this episode, is that communication is the basis for a good partnership and a productively run ambulance. So check out episode 14, The Art of Communication, if you want more details on that.
So to wrap it all up, I think that we've kind of landed on a few things. One, be explicit with your intentions with your partner. This is what I mean. Every single time that I tell you anything, it's going to be of good intent. And work really hard on your communication. Make sure that's good. From a perspective of the person that was already a medic in this, like, new paramedic, double paramedic dynamic, if you were already the medic on the truck, I think the best advice that I could give for anyone that I wish someone would have told me, or I wish I would have practiced better, is to, like, take a step back, to talk less, to, like, literally take a breath for 5 seconds before you interject. Let calls take a little bit more time, and let your partner get that under their feet. Give them a minute to take charge of a call. Give them a minute to like express what they're thinking, and be truly just that safety net. Like just jump in there when they need you to, but not too soon. I think that is like really the best advice that I could give, is to take that step back and chill. And then like kind of a part B of that advice is be explicit in your compliments of them. Tell them the truth. Tell them that you are proud of them, that they're doing a good job, that they're making good choices. Tell them that when they first got their medic, decisions were taking them a little bit longer and now they've sped up so much, and that the fluidity of calls is getting better. Be explicit in your praise for them, because if you want to have a competent partner, you also need to help build the confidence of that partner. And I think that that is something that I completely forgot to do.
You did not?
I did not do as much as I think maybe I should have done.
You did not forget to do it.
So what is your advice for the other half of that team?
Yeah, so from the perspective of just getting out of school and now having to rework your already established partnership, I would say, number one, really like mentally prepare for the things that you know that you need to work on. Really nail down what you know that is going to be your biggest hurdle in the field, and then be honest about those. Like tell your partner, like, hey, I really need to work on A, B, C, and D, and I ask them for advice, but just make it known that those are the things that you already know that you're going to have to work on. And
to be clear, those things are not just clinical.
Correct.
Like it is like dynamics and scene control and all of it. Like I need to work on talking through a call or whatever it is.
Yes, yeah. And then two, I would say it's more so your responsibility to set the standard of how you would like feedback given to you. It's really hard to be upset at somebody for giving you feedback not the way you want it if they don't know how you want it. So I would say your first day in this new role, have that conversation. Be like, hey, if you see me doing something, can you intervene in this way? And then maybe we can talk about it afterwards, or however that looks for you. But I would go ahead and set that standard day one.
For sure. Well, guys, thanks for joining me and Obs today. Without Sofaloaf, we will all be back next episode. But yeah, that's what we got for you. So enjoy your new weird little dynamic.
Good luck.